You're tuning into The Deep Dive, and today we're tackling something really thought-provoking. The forces shaping American society as we move through 2025, specifically looking at the experiences of the Hispanic community.
That's right.
You flagged a blog post for us dated April 4th, 2025 by someone called =𝗧𝗏𝗏. It's titled Adaptations, Mundo Loco, Mad World.
Yeah, and what immediately grabbed me about =𝗧𝗏𝗏's piece is the creative approach. They're not just writing an essay, they're actually using a Spanish adaptation of a pretty well-known song to explore some really significant issues.
Right.
Our goal in this deep dive is to really unpack =𝗧𝗏𝗏's perspective on the challenges facing Hispanic Americans right now, looking at their analysis of the climate and this musical reimagining.
Exactly. We want to understand their take on policy, their observations about identity, and how they're using music as this kind of powerful social commentary. Okay, so =𝗧𝗏𝗏 kicks things off with a pretty broad sweep, right?
Yeah.
Looking at American society as a whole, what struck you as the core of their initial observation?
Well, what's fascinating here is =𝗧𝗏𝗏's central point. A significant portion of America feels like outsiders. It's not just like one or two isolated groups. They're suggesting a much wider sense of alienation. They touch on political disenfranchisement, racial tensions, different experiences around sexuality, economic anxieties, even divides in ideology and intellectual viewpoints. It paints a picture of a society where a lot of people just feel disconnected.
Right, and they don't pull any punches, do they?
Yeah.
=𝗧𝗏𝗏 talks about this feeling that the fundamental agreement between people and their government, the social contract, feels broken for many, leading to this widespread sense of being without power or voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost like they're saying that feeling like you're on the margins isn't some fringe experience anymore. It's become a surprisingly common feeling.
Precisely. And the way they frame it is really striking. Quintessential American blues songs for the present state of the home of the free. That phrase, it really sticks with you.
It does.
It suggests a deep-seated sadness and disillusionment, kind of woven into the fabric of the country right now. So what =𝗧𝗏𝗏 is pointing to is a real crisis of belonging in America right now. It's not just about one issue, but a convergence of these different anxieties, creating this widespread feeling that the social fabric itself is, fraying, leaving many feeling unmoored.
Absolutely. They highlight these really heavy emotions that seem to be prevalent. Resentment, isolation, a real sense of loss. And it's not just internal feelings, but also this external experience of feeling feared, rejected, even hated or trapped. It's a pretty bleak snapshot, really.
Yeah, of the social atmosphere they're describing.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, =𝗧𝗏𝗏 argues that all of this sort of coalesces into a shared national psychological state. They use strong terms like longing, inadequacy, and mounting rage.
Why?
It's as if they're saying these aren't just isolated anxieties individuals are grappling with, but a collective emotional reality for a significant part of the population.
Which then naturally leads us to the specific situation of Hispanic Americans. =𝗧𝗏𝗏 moves from this broader sense of societal unease to focus on how these trends are specifically impacting this community. And that's where the Spanish adaptation of Mad World comes in, right?
Yes, that's the core. The adaptation is very deliberately presented as a song for all Hispanic Americans.
Yes.
=𝗧𝗏𝗏 reminds us this is the largest ethnic minority group in the U.S., over 60 million people.
Right.
And they make a crucial point of emphasizing this includes everyone, regardless of their legal status. That context is vital, I think, for understanding the weight of the challenges they then lay out.
So what are the key challenges that =𝗧𝗏𝗏 highlights for Hispanic Americans in 2025? It sounds like they see some pretty significant hurdles.
According to =𝗧𝗏𝗏, policies like Project 2025 are creating substantial limitations. Project 2025, for listeners who might not be familiar, it's a comprehensive policy agenda developed by conservative organizations. =𝗧𝗏𝗏 argues it's leading to restrictions on fundamental aspects of life, access to education, healthcare, labor rights, immigration opportunities, really the building blocks for participating fully in society.
And it doesn't stop there, does it?
Yeah.
They also raise concerns about the erosion of civil rights protections.
Exactly. The efforts to ban DEI, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, are viewed by =𝗧𝗏𝗏 as a direct assault on these protections.
For those unfamiliar, DEI initiatives generally aim to promote fair representation and equal opportunities.
Right, in various settings. =𝗧𝗏𝗏 suggests that rolling back these programs could create an environment where discrimination becomes more widespread and maybe more accepted.
And then there's the really concerning issue of immigration enforcement that =𝗧𝗏𝗏 describes in such stark terms.
Very stark indeed. They mention reports of really troubling conditions in detention centers, not just within the U.S., but also, alarmingly, in facilities abroad.
Abroad. Wow.
Yeah. But what's particularly disturbing are the allegations they raise of individuals being, in their words, kidnapped from their homes, schools, churches, even just off the street.
Kidnapped.
That's the word they use. 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗏 suggests the intended outcome of this is to create a climate of fear within the Hispanic community.
That's a really serious accusation. It paints a picture of a climate of intense intimidation and insecurity. Okay, now let's dig a little deeper into this Project 2025 that 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗏 keeps referencing. What's their interpretation of what's truly driving this initiative?
Well, 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗏 offers a very specific interpretation. While Project 2025 is publicly presented as, a blueprint for governance reform and a return to conservative principles.
Right, that's the official line.
𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗏 believes its fundamental motivation is more about responding to significant demographic shifts in the U.S. and a perceived decline in the historical dominance of white males in positions of power.
So, their argument is that it's less about purely administrative or policy changes, and more about an underlying concern about maintaining a certain social and political hierarchy in the face of a changing America.
That's the crux of their analysis, yeah. They point to specific strategies associated with Project 2025, like expanding the power of the executive branch, seeking to remove civil servants deemed ideologically imposed.
Right, the whole Schedule F thing.
Exactly, and actively dismantling diversity initiatives as evidence to support this underlying motive. So when 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗏 links, say, the expansion of executive power to demographic shifts, they might point to efforts within Project 2025 to centralize authority in a way that could potentially bypass or override the influence of more diverse voices within government.
It's framed by 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗏 as being less about governance reform and more about maintaining power amid shifting cultural and political landscapes. That's a pretty significant claim.
It is.
Now, let's move to what seems to be the emotional core of the blog post. The Spanish adaptation of Mad World. How does 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗏 see this song functioning within this context, with these challenges facing Hispanic Americans?
The Spanish lyrics are very deliberately presented as an anthem,
Yeah.
a unifying expression for Hispanic Americans who are experiencing these challenges we've been discussing. By taking a song that's already widely recognized originally by Tears for Fears, of course,
Right.
and adapting it into Spanish, 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗏 is aiming to create something that resonates deeply and provides a shared emotional vocabulary for their experiences.
It's interesting that they specifically point out how these kinds of adaptations can become fundamentally new songs in their own right,
Yeah.
even while drawing inspiration from the originals. It's not just a simple translation.
Not at all.
It's a reimagining with a very specific purpose and intended audience. What kind of recurring themes emerge from these translated lyrics?
The lyrics are really imbued with a sense of profound weariness and despair. There's this feeling of being constantly surrounded by the same expressions of sadness and being trapped on paths that lead nowhere. They convey this sense of going through the motions of daily life without any real sense of purpose or hope for a better future.
That sounds incredibly bleak.
Yeah.
The imagery in the lyrics about tears filling cups and this absence of emotion, these broken souls, it really paints a vivid picture of deep suffering.
Absolutely. And there's also this strong theme of having to conceal one's sorrow, of feeling like there are no real future prospects. The line about finding the best dreams in those where one is dying is particularly striking.
Oof.
And speaks to a deep-seated sense of hopelessness about the present reality.
And the struggle to express these feelings, that sense of being unheard or unable to articulate the depth of the pain, that must be a tragically common experience for those who feel marginalized and voiceless.
It very likely is. The lyrics also depict this feeling of people just endlessly turning in what's described as an unreal world, disconnected from genuine connection or progress. Then you have the poignant contrast with the perspective of children, who simply dream of feeling whole and growing up in an environment free from fear, which starkly highlights the harsh realities being described.
That juxtaposition is incredibly powerful, and the lines about feeling alone and unheard, even within the supposed sanctuary of school, really underscore how these broader societal issues can infiltrate even the most vulnerable spaces.
Yeah.
The overall feeling of the world being cruel and people moving without any real direction.
Yeah.
It all reinforces this sense of a society deeply out of sync, at least from 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗏's perspective.
It really paints a potent picture of the emotional toll these challenges are taking. Now, Tatanka doesn't just conclude with this somber reflection. They propose a response, a potential way forward. Tell us about this quiet rebellion of peace.
Yeah, exactly. So after painting this stark picture, Tatanka doesn't just leave us with despair. They propose a way forward.
Right.
Yes, after laying out these significant concerns and expressing this sense of despair, Tatanka pivots to a more proactive stance. They state that the time for simply talking about these issues has passed and introduce Project 2025, a quiet rebellion of peace. And they even provide a link to a website, p25.site.
Okay.
It's presented as their practical approach to counteracting the division, fear, and injustice they've described.
And the crucial element here is their chosen method, right?
Yeah.
Tatanka explicitly says this isn't about engaging in traditional forms of resistance or conflict, but rather about an unwavering commitment to love.
Love. Interesting.
Their belief is that love, expressed in specific ways, is ultimately the most effective way to dismantle the power of hate and division.
And how do they envision this quiet rebellion operating in practical terms? What are the specific tools or approaches they advocate for?
They specifically highlight music, cultural fusion, the blending of different cultural expressions, and what they explicitly term collective action, aka Day, as their primary methods.
So they're reclaiming day there.
Seems like it. Their aim is to foster a movement that not only acknowledges the pain, but actively works to uplift, heal, and create unity among people, transcending borders and divisions.
So it's really about harnessing the power of creative expression and community building as tangible tools for positive social change. It's framed as more than just an abstract idea. It's a call to live with purpose, to build with compassion, and to truly embody the belief that love alone can ultimately conquer hate.
Yeah.
This is a really powerful and hopeful message to end on after such a stark portrayal of the current situation.
It is, and they directly encourage you, the listener, to become part of this quiet rebellion of peace. It's a call to action that's rooted in hope and a fundamental belief in the power of human connection and empathy. Now, you also wanted us to connect this back to the quote from Gloria 𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗔𝗡 that Tatanka includes right at the beginning.
Yes, that quote about living on borders and emulsions, keeping intact one's shifting and multiple identity and integrity is like trying to swim in a new element, an alien element. How does that sentiment resonate with everything else we've been discussing?
Well, it beautifully encapsulates the core experience that Tatanka is describing for Hispanic Americans in 2025, doesn't it? Living with fluid and multiple identities, especially when you're also facing the kind of policy challenges and social pressures they outline, it can indeed feel like navigating an entirely unfamiliar and potentially hostile environment.
Like swimming in an alien element.
Exactly. 𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗔𝗡's words really speak to the constant negotiation, the resilience, and the sheer effort required to maintain a sense of self and wholeness in such circumstances.
It really provides an insightful framework for understanding the deeper personal and cultural complexities that are at play here. So, to bring our deep dive into Tatanka's blog post to a close, what would you say are the most significant takeaways for you?
For me, the key insights are Tatanka's stark depiction of a widespread societal fracturing that they believe is affecting a large segment of the American population.
Right, that feeling of being an outsider.
Yeah, and then the very specific and serious challenges they outline for Hispanic Americans in 2025. These challenges, which they link directly to policies like Project 2025 and broader concerns around civil rights, are powerfully expressed through their Spanish adaptation of Mad World.
Yeah, that song really carries a lot of weight here.
A song that becomes a vehicle for conveying a deep sense of despair and alienation.
And ultimately, we see Tatanka's proposed response, this quiet rebellion of peace, which places a strong emphasis on love, the power of cultural expression, and collective action as a means to counteract the division and injustice they perceive.
Exactly.
It's a message that offers a potential path forward, even amidst a rather concerning outlook.
Indeed. It moves beyond simply identifying the problems to actively proposing a way of engaging with them, albeit through a different kind of power, the power of human connection, empathy, and creative expression.
So, for you, our listener, as you absorb Tatanka's analysis, we leave you with this thought. How do these feelings of being an outsider so vividly portrayed in this piece resonate with your own observations of society as we move through 2025? And what role do you believe that music and cultural expression can play in addressing the complex and multifaceted societal challenges that we all face? It's certainly something to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.